Well, good evening, everybody. No, sorry, wait for it. I'm setting up our meeting. All right, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July meeting of the Gungahlin Community Council. Often we don't run a meeting in July because of the clash with State of Origin, and of course we're clashing with the State of Origin. And as you're all well aware, we are doing our meeting online. What with all of the difficulties with the COVID situation, we thought it might be prudent to avoid a face-to-face experience. I'll just ask everybody to mute if they're not active, so keep an eye on that. So we thought it'd be good to do an online version to avoid any issues. And as a blessing, it's a horribly cold and wet night, so fortunately we don't have to go out this evening. So I thank everybody for their patience in that regard. The agenda for the meeting is about to appear before you, so let me just get that up. The Community Council will provide our usual update. Oh, sorry, firstly, as a welcome, no need to sign in because we're not having a face-to-face meeting, so that's not a problem. But I do remind everybody that the meeting is being live streamed on Facebook Live. And of course, as a result, there'll be a video recording of this meeting and made available online as well. So the agenda today, I'll give a little bit of an update on what's been happening in the Community Council since the June meeting. Then our speaker list includes an update from Suzanne Orr, one of the Yirrabee electorate and members of the Legislative Assembly. So we're looking forward to that. Then we have a series of updates from those involved with safety and security in the community, led by Rachel Hutker from the AFP, Troy Roberts from the AFP Association, who will talk a little bit about their advocacy to support an upgrade of the Gungahlin Police Station. And Laurie Blackwell joins us from the ACT Neighbourhood Watch Association to talk about the opportunities for neighbourhood watch in Gungahlin. And finally, and perhaps also importantly, Ben Green and some of his colleagues from the Environment Planning and Sustainable Development Directorate will provide an update on the current consultation going on to assess the community and recreation facilities requirements in Gungahlin. Hopefully everyone's seen plenty of promotion about that online or via email, and this will be an opportunity for Ben and the team to provide an update on what's going on there and ask any questions people might have. So I'll push on with the GCC update. So a major campaign that we've been running this year has been our call to suspend land sales in the Gungahlin Town Centre until we believe there are processes in place that are actually ensuring that the sale of land is going to actually contribute to the development of a viable town centre. And I'll sort of talk a little bit about that in a couple of slides. We've had two motions in the Assembly, one initiated by Suzanne or another by Yirrabee MLA Andrew Braddock. And additionally, we have had a petition running sponsored by Andrew, which I'll give you a quick summary of again in the next slide. That petition is now closed. We've had 714 signatures, which is, I think, a very strong statement from the community that they support the actions the Community Council's proposed. Now, what happens now is the petition will then get tabled in the Legislative Assembly, and correct me if I'm wrong, when Suzanne comes up, the first sitting of the Assembly won't be until August, so nothing will happen until then. Once a petition reaches 500 signatures, it will be automatically, as I understand it, passed to the relevant standing committee in the Legislative Assembly to be considered. So that's probably the next action. In the meantime, and independent of all that, work continues to go on to develop the indicative land release program, which is much more important than the name suggests. This is a listing of the blocks of land around the ACT that will be sold over the next 4 years. It's a little unclear whether that will be part of the ACT budget in August. It's normally part of the budget, but given all the disruptions for budget timelines around COVID, that may vary, but certainly I think we're expecting it to be part of the budget. And that will then drive a whole bunch of compelling events around blocks that are being brought to market. And we'll have to see whether the commitment of the SLA to improve the go-to-market process materialises, but more importantly, whether the government acknowledges they need to do something different in terms of delivering sites in Gungahlin. Just as a reminder, the petition asks that the complete set of recommendations from the planning refresh completed way back in 2018 are actually actioned, that the review of draft variation 364, which attempts to capture the outcomes of that planning refresh, to actually respond to Suzanne Orr's motion in the town assembly, in the Legislative Assembly, get some updates on what this assessment of community and recreation needs are, and I think we have a more clear view of that, and I'll speak of that briefly. And of course, EPSDD will be speaking later. Allow there to be some really genuine consultations about how we're going to use the remaining land in the town centre and how the town centre will evolve. And that really needs a whole range of stakeholders to be involved, but not least of which is industry, the community, and the government. Some justification of why it's proposed in draft variation 364 to greatly reduce the amount of space reserved in the town centre for commercial or office space, and to develop a strategy to encourage businesses to move into the town centre. So that's the thrust of the petition, and they continue to be the major planks of our activity. On that front, there's a forum run by EPSDD called the Environment and Planning Forum to engage a range of stakeholders, including all the community councils, like the Gungahlin Community Council. And unusually, the Planning Minister attended the forum on the 28th of June and was going to respond to questions provided in advance, which the GCC provided. But at the meeting, we did not receive a response to these 3 questions, seeking specific details around what actions the government was taking to support the further development of the Gungahlin region and town centre, supporting more employment, which is extracted from Suzanne Orr's motion. How will the Gungahlin community be engaged in the process of developing a response? And how will the ACT commit to establishing a cross-directorate place-based approach to completing Gungahlin? So looking at the perspective we all have as residents, rather than roads and land planning and parks and conservation services, a series of separate directorates. So try to create a forum where we can have these conversations. The minister then went on to suggest that that contracts have been awarded to provide advice on mixed use developments, which was again part of Suzanne Orr's motion. A small amount of research indicates that they're actually not part of the Gungahlin initiative, but they're part of the planning reform project. So they're nothing special, but hopefully they will inform mixed use developments. Draft variation 364, this change to the territory plan, specifically the town centre precinct code, is being reviewed, or it is the subject of an inquiry by the Standing Committee on Planning. And that inquiry submissions for that inquiry closed on the 10th of July. And thank you to all of those who provided their input and the few that shared those with us or provided comments on our webpage. We'll now wait to see what the Planning Committee comes up with on the basis of that feedback. In the past 2 weeks, 2 very significant development applications have been approved by the Planning Directorate. The first of these is the establishment development, the one being undertaken by Geocon, on the site originally designated for air towers. This is about it's multiple towers, the tallest which is 16 stories on the corner of Gundroo Drive and Gozard Street. This picture on the left, as you're looking at it. Essentially because they have come back on their 3rd development application, addressed all the reasons they were knocked back on the 2nd development application, and have been improved because the new development application is substantially the same as a proposal approved in 2018. It's a pretty disappointing outcome. We know that literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of residents don't agree that a 16-story building should be across the road from residences on two sides, but this is, I guess, reflection of the fundamental failing of the planning system at the moment. It just doesn't seem to be delivering the outcomes the community would reasonably expect. And the council sort of worked pretty hard to oppose that development in partnership on occasions with the YMCA, who have a childcare centre next door, and continue to be under some pressure from that project. The other development that's been approved is what's been sold on the market as the Sierra development. This is the block on the other half of the Gungahlin club site. As is allowed during the assessment of the development, the assessors went back to the proponent, that's the developer, and said, look, I don't think this is okay, you need to make some changes. And subsequently those changes were made, and as the development's been approved, but there's no public detail about exactly what changes were made and what they look like. So we'll have to wait and see, although they do relate to the addition of some tenants, additional commercial tenancies. In a conversation I had today with someone from the planning directorate, they indicated these were very small tenancies, 4 of them of 20, 30, 40 and 60 square metres each, which it seems ridiculously small to me, but that's what's happened. So ongoing development, but again, these the Sierra development's 152 units and I think 6 commercial tenancies in total. Establishment is 370 or 372 units and a single-digit number of commercial tenancies on the ground floor. The other, just flagging some consultations that are underway as part of the reform. Hey, is that you, Rachel? Okay, we'll just press on for the moment. Yeah, so as part of the reform of the planning system, there's a new process called district planning and district plans being introduced. There was a workshop held in Gungahlin to talk about how Gungahlin, what was important to Gungahlin and how that might fit into a district plan. And subsequent to that, the whole district planning process has been made available online. So there's kind of a pin and a map type approach from the consultation, which is on the Have Your Say website. And there's a bunch of resources that are very interesting. This is a image here is a picture of the consolidated planning policy map, and you'll notice the ring around Casey and the grey rings around the town centre. They're areas of urban intensification or greater development, residential development. So if people have a view about how they would like the land planning to be done in Gungahlin, then they should chase that consultation down. There's lots of great resources provided on the Have Your Say site for that. In parallel with this, and I won't spend too much time on this because Ben and the team will talk about this towards the end of the agenda. It's running in parallel with the district planning one, which has this one has a survey and a pin in the map consultation process, and has, and this I quote from the website here, a focus on developing a community centre for the Gungahlin Town Centre and the sale of 2 sites in the Casey Group Centre being released for community, residential and commercial uses. And I guess one of the concerns we flagged on behalf of the community was that there was an expectation that the 2 sites, which are in this little sort of pink area opposite the Casey Town Centre, Group Centre, sorry, would actually be for community use, yet the blocks are currently tagged as being suitable for 100 residences and 24,000 square metres of commercial space. So it's, we're looking forward to understanding how that came to be and what the expectation is around those sites. But certainly the best way to drive that is for you as residents to respond to the community and recreation facilities consultation. And there's lots of detail about that. Again, it's a Have Your Say survey. Go to the Have Your Say website by searching for it. Go to Gungahlin and you'll see it there easily. We have a couple of comments on our website. We think it's really important that in subsequent phases of this consultation, that a bit more of a demand side approach is taken to work out what demand there are for community recreation and sporting needs, and then work out, well, how do we fit in all the facilities we need into what's left in Gungahlin in terms of land to make sure everyone gets all the services and experiences they expect. Whereas this seems to be a reasonably narrow focus on these sites. So again, we'll hear more about that in a moment. And just to finish off, kind of as a reporting back, every year there is a consultation that the government undertakes to take input on the ACT budget. The submission from the Community Council is pretty aligned to the sort of messaging we were putting out during the election and the advocacy we've had this year. So we're asking the ACT government to put in place a cross-directorate approach to completing Gungahlin, put in place a program to fund this financial year, that's 21-22, a genuine program work to attract retailers and employers to the town centre. Really keen to see progress be made on the gap between the availability of facilities to enable service providers to supply community services, and the demand for those services, and also to work on the next phase of this consultation we'll talk about later on. Also to focus on the police upgrades we mentioned, but also to keep focused on those perennial issues that the community wants action on, the road network, both into Gungahlin and in between Gungahlin and the rest of Canberra, and the traffic flow and parking across the town centre. So that gives you a flavour of the sort of things that we're feeding back to the government. And just finally, and I have this in chronological order, there is also a consultation going on for the office, the shop areas or commercial sites in Moncrief and Taylor. And you can see those in those photos just there. There's surveys being conducted, quite a comprehensive survey on the Have Your Say site. There are some workshops being run on the 19th and the 29th and 17th of July, and also a series of pop-up meetings. So there's plenty of ways you can get engaged in that consultation. And again, if you want to influence how those sites are going to play out, then you do need to get on and provide that feedback. So that completes the update. I'll pause briefly if anyone's got any questions or comments they'd like to make. Please raise their hand. And when I say raise their hand, I don't mean raise your hand. I mean raise your hand on the screen or send a chat message in so that we can respond to it. Nothing coming up. All right. On that basis, I will push on. If anything twigs a thought that you want to come back to later, please, by all means, get in touch with us via email or give us a call on our number. So I'll now move on to the remainder of the agenda. And tonight, our first speaker is Suzanne Orr, one of the Yerrabi MLAs. Suzanne, are you ready to roll? He says, checking to make sure he hasn't.
Yes, I'm just getting it.
Oh, good. Great.
Yep.
All right, well, I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
There we go.
Hello, thank you. Look, I would just like to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on the lands of the Ngunnawal people.
Yes, I'm just getting it. Oh, good. Great. Yeah, well, I'll stop sharing.
David, you might just need to hit mute on your button. Look, I would just like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Ngunnawal people and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I've got quite a bit to cover. Peter had sort of given me a bit of a agenda list of things that the council would have appreciated me to go through, but I note that there's quite a few people speaking to some of those points later on, so I might just leave it to them because I dare say they've got a little bit more detail considering they live and breathe it every single day. But I would I think I'll start with the planning in the town centre, and Peter made lots of reference to the various different parts that are going on. I would like to note I am on the planning committee, and we do have the inquiry before us into DB 364, which I know is a very topical issue for the council and the community, and I've had a lot of discussions with the council on that, but considering it is under consideration and we've just received the submissions for that and they're looking to have hearings, the committee has asked me just to err on the side of caution and not say too much about that, just so that the committee has its space and its time to actually come up with some, to consider the evidence and come up with its findings without prejudice. So I appreciate that might leave a few people disappointed, but I'm happy to come back once that committee inquiry is over and talk as freely as you'd like about that particular topic and answer any questions that you have then or that perhaps can't be answered today. Now, I did move the motion at the beginning of the year that Peter made reference to. It was quite a wide-ranging motion and had a lot of components in it. As you can imagine, with something that does have a lot of components and takes in quite a bit, it does take time for those wheels to turn over and to start to see the effects come out of that particular motion. And I must note it always was a motion for a long-term view. It wasn't a short-term stop, because I don't think we need a short-term stop. I think we need to see that real systemic change in how things go about. So we do, I have been advised by the ACT government in looking, by the minister I should say, in looking at getting an update for that particular motion, that they are looking at how they can best do mixed use land development in the ACT so that we can start to see those improvements. So that process is in place. The minister is required to make an update on my motion to the Assembly by the end of the 2021 sitting year, and I know that that does seem quite a way off, but it is actually a pretty standard time within the Assembly for getting updates to motions, just because the bureaucracy does need time to go off and do these things and come back and follow the appropriate cabinet processes. So it is what it is, and once we've got that update, I'm sure everyone will be waiting and reading it with anticipation. I also note that there is some surveys out at the moment on the recreational analysis and the community facilities within Gungahlin, which Peter did make a mention of, and I think Ben Green is also on the agenda tonight to talk more specifically at that. But I would throw my weight behind it and say, please jump online and do that survey, because it is really important to have the community's input to those particular things. Peter, are you happy for me just to keep cycling through the different items, or did you want to do questions as I go through?
I'm happy for you to press on and
just do questions at the end.
And just do questions at the end.
Yep. Easy done.
I'm not seeing hands popping up or anything, so I think we're good to go.
Yeah, great, thank you. So look, some of the other work I've been doing, I have been working on a carers recognition bill for the ACT. So just in the last sitting in June, I introduced a private members bill. We are the last jurisdiction in Australia to have a Carers Recognition Act, but now we have it introduced there. I'm hoping to bring it on for debate by the end of the year, but it is before a committee right now. So this Carers Recognition bill will recognise the role that unpaid carers have within our community. So usually it's family members, but it can be friends and other people in our lives who come in and help those in our community who do need that extra assistance. And carers do tend to be some of the more selfless people within our community by their nature, and they're the last people to ask for help themselves. So we see that they have some really big challenges in life, and particularly because of the caring responsibilities that they take on. And there's certainly no one's to complain about their caring responsibilities, but the bill recognises that because of the great work that they do, that there's a little bit more within our community that we need to do to recognise and to acknowledge that role they have. So an example might be a young carer within our community who has caring responsibilities, say for a parent who might have an illness or might have a disability. They want to take on that role, they want to do it, but they also need to finish their education. So how can we best recognise the role they have and make the supports that we need to make in order for them to actually realise both objectives? So that bill's been introduced. It puts in place a set of principles around how we support carers within the community, and puts in place a number of reporting obligations for organisations, particularly those that are integral to the care relationship, to actually say what they're doing to enliven those principles, so that there is a level of transparency and accountability. We did about 6 months worth of consultation on this one, spoke to a number of carers and carers up here in Yarrabee as well, and it was fantastic to hear back from them. The thing that we heard back from most carers was that they felt invisible. So they've really appreciated the recognition that comes from having it written into law that they not only exist, but they're valued, and that they will be respected. So, as I said, I've introduced that bill. The way the process works is it's now referred off to a committee. The committee has chosen to inquire, and they've sought submissions. So if people were interested in making a submission on the bill, they can through the committee process. They've got 2 months from the time of the referral to hand up their report. Once that report's done, the government will consider it. And like I said, once all that process is through, we can hopefully bring it on for debate and pass it, so it's law by the end of the year. That's my hope. We'll see how the processes go. The other thing I've been working on quite a bit has been the Gungahlin Town Centre traffic survey. I've had a lot of feedback and myself experienced, I think it's fair to say, frustrations with particularly some of the intersections around the town centre. And Labor did have a commitment and is working on doing a mesoscopic traffic modelling survey, and I'll run through what that is in a minute. But what I wanted to do with this survey was to actually get an understanding from the people who use the town centre, from our community, as to what's actually going on there and what they'd like to really be looked at. Now, before coming tonight, it was put to me, what is a mesoscopic traffic modelling? Because it's not necessarily intuitive to everyone. And I've got a bit of a definition, and bear with me while I read it out. A mesoscopic traffic flow models were developed to fill the gap between the family of microscopic models that describe the behaviour of individual vehicles and the family of macroscopic models that describe traffic as a continuum flow. Now, it goes on like that, and it's quite technical and quite jargony, but when I read it, in short, I think it's fair to say what this model does is there's 2 types of models. There's one that assume that traffic just goes in a flow, it's uninterrupted, and it just works pretty seamlessly. And then there's another model where you put in place all the different behavioural ideas that people can turn right, people can turn left. They're not just necessarily going straight ahead at exactly the same speed. What it does is it takes those 2 concepts and it overlays them. So you get quite a flexible model of trying to predict how traffic behaves in a particular area, which is actually quite good for our town centre, because it's not a place, it's not just a straight road where people do the same speed the whole way. There's a lot going on, it's quite dynamic. So that's the model that they're looking at building for the town centre, to consider how they can actually improve the traffic flow around a lot of those intersections. Now, the work I'm doing through the survey, and we've had almost 600 people respond to the survey so far, so we're really impressed with that response. We're still getting lots of people doing it, so we're leaving the survey up and trying to capture as much feedback as we possibly can. But it's been really good to have that feedback, because we can start to say, well, these are the intersections that people are really struggling with, and these are the reasons why. So when you're going and looking at this model and looking at behavioural, here's some things to start with from here's some assumptions to work with that people in the area struggle with. Now, some of the common feedback, and with 600 responses, you can imagine there is someone in my office who's going to have a pretty big task of ordering this all into a comprehensive report. But I have got some initial feedback for you. This is by no means all of it, and we will be putting out the actual findings once we finish, but I guess a little bit of a sneak peek for you at what might be coming. The stuff we're finding is the intersection we labelled B, which is Gozard Street and Ernst Kavanagh Street near the KFC. The intersection which we labelled C, which is the Valley Avenue and Gozard Street near the pool. And the intersection which we've labelled A on Gribble and Ernst Kavanagh Streets near Bunnings. And the intersection which we've labelled F, which is F. Capides and Gungahlin Place West near Young and Frisky, are all being identified as the intersections with the most issues. And I personally found that quite interesting. You know, people I've spoken to, I live over in Franklin, so I come to the town centre from the Franklin direction. Depending on who you speak to, everyone has their intersection that they seem to not like the most. But we are getting a very clear indication, with that 600 responses of where the actual issues might be a bit more across the board, as opposed to just what I experience when I drive there. So lots of people have recommended better timing of the traffic lights in the town centre to help improve the traffic flow. Certainly the roads around the fast food places have definitely been a huge feature and something that we'll be pushing for to be looked at. The intersection on FKPDs and Gungahlin Place West in Young and Frisky, the poor visibility from the bus layover has come up quite a bit. So that's one where the traffic modelling wouldn't actually have picked up that problem. That's something that through the experience of people who use the area and the feedback we've got through that we'll be able to advocate on and see what we can do. Gin Street near the petrol stations. We haven't actually covered that in the survey, but lots of people have nominated it as being a terrible one. And so that's actually one that we've added in. So that's, you know, if you haven't done the survey yet and you want to, and you've got something that's not captured, feel free to add it in. We're certainly open to hearing as much as we can. Now we did have one question in there. It wasn't a question of which roads do you want duplicated, because I think there's already a pretty good understanding that there's another round of road duplications to come with some of our bigger arterial road ones. But we have asked for priorities from the community. And what we're hearing is that Gungahlin Drive West of Gundaroo Drive is the leading choice that respondents of the survey would like to see duplicated, followed by Gundaroo Drive North of Mirabai Drive. So that's a bit of an interesting one when we start looking outside of the town centre. So to some of those more arterial roads around Gungahlin in particular. Now I did have updates on a little bit around policing and a little bit on some other stuff, but I'm happy and a little bit on the community facilities, but considering you've got lots of speakers coming to speak to those later in the agenda, I'm happy to leave it for them. And not steal their thunder and take some questions if you'd like me to take questions, or if there's something else I haven't spoken about that you'd like to put me on the spot and see if I can answer, feel free to jump in and go for it. Oh, the other thing I just wanted to say too, sorry, this just came through very last minute, Peter, just before the meeting. I did get an update on the SLA, and apparently the advice I've got is that the SLA will contact the Community Council in August to begin discussing the timeline and process for commercial sale opportunities in the Gungahlin Town Centre. So I think that's going to a little bit of the land release program that you were talking about. And that program, that land release does usually line up with the budget process and would be before cabinet at the moment. So yeah, the other notes I've got here is the SLA will follow the process outlined in the CEO's letter to the GCC on the 6th of May 2021, as discussed in the 9 June meeting with the council. So I think that's the one where it spoke about AOIs and making sure there was a really strong community voice really early on in the piece for those blocks that are released by the SLA. I'm also being told that the Chief Minister has received the letter from the GCC in relation to, sorry, my cat's just decided she wants attention, in relation to including a Commonwealth Public Service Hub located in Gungahlin in a potential Canberra City deal. And the Chief Minister is very supportive of this and will be, the understanding I've got from my advice is that they'll make it a part of a request from the ACT to the Commonwealth. So I will keep watching both of those two and happy to keep the council updated and to also hear your feedback about about how those two progress and what you're finding with the meetings that you're having too. So yeah, so is there, I guess, questions, Peter?
Yeah, well, thank you for tracking those letters. You'll be aware that some of those have been outstanding for a little while. So anything you can do to encourage a response. And just for everyone who's interested, on those occasions we do send correspondence to ministers. We carbon copy all of the MLAs and the electorate as a process, as a mechanism of providing some transparency across the Assembly, but more particularly to our Yerrabi MLAs. So they have the opportunity to follow those up. And so there have been a few of those of late. I have Terence Palmer had a question, Suzanne, so I will get him, I'll unmute him. He's on twice. I'll unmute one of them and see how we go.
Hey, Peter, can you hear me?
I can certainly hear you, Terence.
Awesome, thanks so much. Thanks very much for coming on, Susan. So I've got maybe a question and a statement. So I will... I'll start with the statement. So I just want to thank you for your response to the Throsby crime incident recently. But I would like to note it's a bit disappointing that it's taking so long to get anybody from the Minister's office to help address the Throsby community directly, not necessarily via this forum. So I sent an email again the other day, and I just note that it's just seems to be waiting. So that's a comment. The other one
I'd
was,
say to that comment, if you don't mind,
yeah,
feel
sure,
free to take the Gungahlin Community Council approach, Terence, of CCing my office in, because then we know, you know, we sort of know what the community is raising.
Oh no, you are.
Sort of, yeah, good.
Yeah.
So, yes. Anyway,
okay,
yes,
cool.
and your question.
So the question now, I was lucky enough to get on to the Chief Minister's question time on ABC Canberra, and admittedly I did ask the question without notice. So I asked the question around what is the government of the day currently doing about the increase of policing or policing inside of Gungahlin. I know there are other speakers that are coming up that may address it, but I'm interested from an MLA, from a government point of view, our elected representatives, what are we doing to improve and increase visible policing? I'm just saying that we've got additional 60 police allocated and we've managed to fill 28. I mean, that's that, and I acknowledge that it was a question I noticed to the Chief Minister, so that's fine. But I want to know what you guys are doing, not necessarily what AFP and Neighbourhood Watch. I want to know what you guys are doing to improve the policing in the Gungahlin area. Thank you.
So yeah, no, good question, Terence. And I think so if I've understood the question correctly, it's and top points to you for finding a question that I can answer and not the officials. So I think that the question is, what are the MLAs and what are the government, like the political part of it, doing to make sure that policing within the community is meeting the needs of the community? If I've got that in a nutshell, correct?
100%. Yep. 100%.
Yep. Okay, so I think that's a really good question. I think the short answer, and I will elaborate on it, I think the short answer is the government in particular sets the policy settings. You know, the police are highly specialised, they're highly trained. We let them get on with the policing work, but we certainly set that expectation on behalf of the community. And I know there's been some stuff in Throsby, in particular in instances, Terence, and I know you've been in contact with my office about, that have raised a lot of concern. And I would note, you know, the response from the Minister's office aside, but those have definitely been heard, and there's been a lot of work. In my notes, which I didn't go through, but I'm happy to do now that it's come up in conversation, I understand the police have arrested and charged 2 suspects in relation to a number of property offences, and 1 suspect has been arrested and charged with driving a stolen vehicle in New South Wales. So that's the update I've got from the Minister's office in regards to the operational part of that particular incident. You know, I have to take from what they say that they are the ones who get on and investigate these things, and I have a lot of confidence in them. Going back to your original question of what is the government doing, yes, there is the 60 additional police officers. I think the more important part to note of the direction, though, that the policing in the ACT is going under the government's policy settings is moving to more of a community model. So looking at, you know, instead of having I guess a responsive bit where a crime happens and then you come through and you investigate, and you know, it's quite, I guess, reactive, for lack of a better way to put it. You know, it's moving to a more proactive community-based one where police are out in the community. There is that visible presence. You'll see them around the community, and also building up those relationships with the community, so that people know that you can approach the police, that there's no stigma there, that there's no misunderstanding, that it's actually quite accessible, that they're very friendly people, that, you know, they're people you can trust, that you can go to when you know you're not sure something's quite right, so that you have that feed into what they're doing, so that you know we have a stronger community. And we know where to anticipate things that might happen or where there might be instances. So I think, you know, hopefully that, Terence, starts to go to some of what you're saying, but it's moving from that more responsive to that more proactive model of policing. And that's what the government's been really focused on. I myself am very supportive of that. I think it's a very positive model for our community, and it makes us a much stronger community for that type of response. But, you know, happy if you have some more comments to have a bit of a chat about that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much, Susan. I might just take that up directly with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think we'll get some more about that a little further on.
Yeah, I think you will too. Yeah.
Next question in the chat's from Louise Chia.
I don't have the chat up, Peter, so would you mind just reading the question?
Sorry, sorry, I was trying to unmute. So I attended the community planning for the town centre. And I'm still sort of wondering, in terms of sort of from a government point of view, like whether there is a sort of, you know, almost like a project management sort of approach to a town centre where you like, we have the discussions like who wants what and where, but I want to know if there's some sort of resource somewhere that I can get from the government about what the actual objectives are and what are those sort of target measures of success when you implement things, so that, you know, we know what we're actually aiming for. It's just sort of more
how's it going to be realised?
Why? So, like, is it to increase business? If so, what are the target measures for that, et cetera, et cetera? Is there a stuff somewhere? Yeah.
So I think Louise, the document you're after is actually the document that they're working up through these consultations. If I've understood what it is you're quite after, there is a number of documents that are out about the process, and I don't know if you've seen any of those, but sort of go to the planning reform process that they've currently got and the objectives of that and what they're hoping to achieve. I think, though, if I've understood you correctly, what you're actually after is okay, if this is what everyone says, how's it actually going to be realised, and how's it you know, going to be written into the planning codes to make sure that it's there and providing a level of accountability to development. Is that the bit you're after, or have I misunderstood?
No, not really. I sort of think, like, you know, we've got this question now that's come up in the council of, you know, too much residence versus business in the centre. So I want to know, like, surely somewhere there are some sort of like fundamental goals of a town centre, and what are the, you know, what are they? Like, you know, everyone sort of, is there a sort of government plan for the town centre in terms of, we want to this is the point. I don't know what like the government wants from the town.
Oh, okay. So like, what's I think, as Peter and I have discussed, like, what's the vision? Is that where's the vision written down? Is that sort of where we?
The vision.
Yeah.
So, and there must have been an original vision, and, you know, have we met any of those targets that were set out for the original project?
Yeah, no, I'm with you now. So so with that, there's a couple of different things. There is the overall ACT planning strategy, which sets out the vision for the whole city. I understand you want to scale that down to Gungahlin. That's the purpose of your question. We do have DBF 364, and I know there's some different views as to how well that does or doesn't realise the vision for the town centre. But I'm not going to go into those right now. But I'm happy to come back and have a chat in the future when I'm more at liberty and not on an inquiry into it. But the vision that you're talking about, that's actually through the district level planning. So that's taking the information from the community, plus what's already known, because there is a recognition that there has been a lot of conversations on planning, and that we can already take the wealth of knowledge that comes from those, but checking in through this process to make sure that they're still sound, those understandings, and adding in whatever you know, the community would like to see added in there, and that will feed into really getting to that district level planning, which will be for the town centre, and going to that vision in particular that you're looking at. Having said that, there is over time, there's been different strategies and different plans outlined for the town centre, and they have incorporated I guess not dissimilar, but you know, slightly different consistent views for the town centre. So I think I don't think there's one document I can easily point you to, unfortunately, at this point in time. I think there's a few things in motion, but I'm happy if you shoot my office an email, so it's or@act.gov.au, anyone's welcome to email. We can certainly send you some links to what we do have, and happy to have a conversation to sort of you know, nut it down to finding what it is you want. But I have a feeling it's the stuff that's coming through this district level planning process now.
Okay, thank you.
Well, certainly if you actually do find something that looks like a strategy or a vision for the town centre, Suzanne, please do pass it on to us as well, because we're still.
But Peter and I have many chats about this one.
Well, I
know.
There isn't one, and, you know, certainly there are no metrics. So, but moving on, the next question, and probably the last one for Suzanne, because we have some other speakers tonight, is from Imran Khan.
Hey, hello, Imran.
Hi, how you going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Just similar to Terence, I won't take too long. I actually did email you and all the other 4 constituents following the spate of issues that happened at Frosby. It was a little bit disappointing. I haven't had a response from you or the other Labor constituent, but I have a response
please let me
from Leanne James and Andrew Braddock.
Yeah.
And I guess more to the point, you talk about proactive approach. Some of those ideas that you're looking at doing, is that going to be something that be in consultation with the community or not?
So that community model of policing is something that we've been moving towards. So it is already something we're doing. It is in consultation with the community. If you think there is a part of the community that could be better reached out to, then that's certainly a discussion that I'm more than happy to have. I think with the police presenting later, it's also a good opportunity to raise it with them there. But certainly, look, let me apologise. I thought we were on top of all the emails because we've had a few from Throsby. So I'm sorry if we haven't responded to yours. But certainly more than happy. If you think there's a connection there that can be made, more than happy to take that feedback.
100%, because I actually did have proactive, potential solutions, and I'd appreciate a response from you or the other Labor constituent.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll have a look and see if we can't locate your email. But yeah, if not, if you wouldn't mind just shooting it through again, that might actually be quite helpful. It just brings it to the top of the email box and helps me to find it quickly for you.
And I think just given what's been happening in that particular area, it might even be helpful to have a bit of an online session with the community in that area, with yourself or.
I think, I think that's good. I know I'm certainly been in contact with Terence quite a bit and in the Throsby residents group and keep an eye on that. I certainly don't want to go in there messaging every single day and taking
I understand that.
the community's message group.
No, I respect that.
The last thing the community.
So I think maybe a separate online meeting with the Throsby group.
Yeah, and I think that's one to talk to I think that's one we should have a chat to the police about too.
Excellent.
And making those connections. But I think they are later on the agenda, so it's probably worth.
Well, as soon as we get through this last question, we will. I'll have Rachel on the line. So, Henley.
Hello, Henley.
Hey, Susan, how are you? Yeah,
good
to have you. Yeah, thanks for your time and thanks for going through all the things that you're doing for Gungahlin. My questions regarding the Gungahlin town centre and then traffic thing that you're working on. With the surveys being done by GCC in the past, it surely identifies what's the key problems and stuff. And the survey that what you're doing and Michael is doing another survey as well, and none of them are not part of the USA surveys. The USA surveys are from the ACT government, and I know the surveys that what you and Michael doing is a different surveys. There's so many surveys going around, and it's trying
to say we're putting you through death by survey, Henley?
No. What I'm saying, you could probably use some of the surveys that GCC has done in the past, and then you can manipulate a couple of data, and then you can make it better. But sometimes what I feel like, are we trying to buy some time while fixing the problem? The problem, what I find is we don't have enough jobs in town center. That's the one that creates a lot of traffic in the peak hours, and we don't have a dedicated T2 lane. So my thing is have you considered any of those T2 lanes, or while we're fixing the small problems in addressing the elephant in the room, have you considered any of those T2 lanes and all those things? So that might probably a good start.
So I think my first question to you, Henley, is please do the survey, or comment is please do the survey. I appreciate that Gungahlin Community Council has done quite a few really good surveys over the years, and I have actually used those in my work. So to your first point of using those, I promise you I have quite enthusiastically used those, and that was part of a lot of the early discussions I had around the community centre commitment that Labor put forward. So that was a lot of my work and something I'll continue to work on, and I hope in the future, if I'm invited back, I'll be able to give you an update not too long away about that. But yes, so we definitely use those surveys. What I would say is the town centre is a pretty dynamic place. It's not sitting still. It doesn't stay the same. And there's a lot going on in the town centre, as you can appreciate. And certainly the feedback I had got from people was that there was a lot, particularly with the intersections, and that just wasn't quite, people wanted to have their say. They wanted to be able to say, I don't like using this intersection and this is why it's frustrating. So that was the genesis for the particular survey that I put out. And I think with over 600 responses, we probably hit a nerve there that people really want to have their say on that. I would argue that's me doing my job as an MLA. No, it's not a government survey, but I don't think you necessarily have to wait for the government to do something. If I can take some initiative and feed into the minister who is doing these other studies and will be doing these other studies, I think it's actually the community wins. It's a value add, so it's actually a good thing overall. You know, while we've got that particular survey out, there's nothing to stop us looking at other things in the future. And I would note, you know, we've got a range of things going on in the town centre, and there's lots there. And I know people in Gungahlin are really passionate about that town centre, and myself included. I mean, I remember when the town centre was a Woolies, a sandwich shop, and the Raiders Club. It certainly changed quite a bit from then. And you know, I know we want to make sure it's the best it can be because we want a really good town centre. So that's something I'm committed to continuing to work on. There's no silver bullet on that one. There's no one thing. It's got to continue to be looking at lots of different things and working on them, but my commitment's there to do that.
Yeah, so with the survey,
Hanley, we're very over time, so if is it a quick one?
Yeah, it's a quick one. Just going back to the survey, what I was trying to do, Susan, you know, you could probably potentially ask the government to do the survey, like, you know, you could use your questions as part of the government questions, so it comes directly to the, you know, USA survey portal. So, and then, you know, what's going to happen once you submit the survey and then government comes back and then they have a community survey, another survey going to happen. And, you know, so my thing is like, you know, if you work, because you're part of the government, if you have that collaboration, then you can come up with one kind of things and then, you know, it make it easy for everyone. So
in undertaking this survey, I've worked quite closely with Minister Steele, who has the ministerial portfolio for this, and he's spoken about the traffic survey that he's doing. I've spoken about where I saw the gap on that and the need to actually get some more feedback from the community, just a little bit of a step before you start working on building the models and testing those. So it's actually been done quite closely with my ministerial colleague to actually value add to that process, not to replicate something that's going to come later. And he was quite happy for me to get on and do that. He had confidence in me to do it, particularly given my background, my professional background. So, you know, there has been that coordination, there has been that collaboration, and it's something that I'm actually quite happy to do and quite keen to do as an MLA, because I think that keeps me informed about what the community is actually thinking, and that's a big, in my opinion, a big component of my job.
Well, I certainly look forward to seeing some budget allocated in this 21-22 budget, indicating that all this data that's been collected is going to turn into action, because one of the common responses we get back is, why would I bother completing a survey? I don't ever see anything that comes out of it. So I know that sounds a bit negative, but it is a common theme, and the fact that you've got 600 responses just validates that we need to move to the action phase sooner rather than later. So, Suzanne, thank you for coming along and taking such a wide range of topics. It's good to see we're moving forward on some fronts, and that's very much appreciated. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and happy to come back in the future and keep talking.
Terrific, thank you. So we've obviously snuck out of a couple of themes that came up when we were talking to Suzanne around policing and what's going on in the town centre. And I think we have Rachel Hutke from the AFP, who's I'm not sure what the official title is, but certainly the station commander or station boss for Gungahlin. Are you there, Rachel?
Hi, Peter. How are you going?
Good. Sorry, I probably made a meal of your official title, but perhaps if you can correct me and talk a little bit about what you've been up to in keeping Gungahlin safe in the last few months.
Title's not really important, but officer in charge is probably the easiest one to work with. Many thanks to Suzanne for addressing some of the topics that we knew were of interest. I'll probably just start with traffic congestion, because we've already covered that. I know that you had some conversations with the person who was acting in my role while I've recently been on leave, and I just thought it would be useful to share that with the group, just to say that police don't attend all accidents. parties exchange details, and then the motorist submit an accident report, and that's then sent through to Access Canberra. So even though that branding with Access Canberra is a co-brand, we don't hold data on that. So that's why we've had some difficulty getting back to you with any statistics in relation to congestion and accidents. And I know that's high on people's minds at the moment. The second thing I wanted to raise was Throsby. That's obviously a hot topic tonight, and happy to take questions later. I think Suzanne gave a really great summary of the arrests in that matter. Unfortunately, because the investigation's ongoing, I probably can't really give any more than what Suzanne has already provided. So I thought I would just give a couple of stats and then just some general concerns that we've received and some advice to the community on those issues. Are you happy with that, Peter? Just general advice?
Absolutely. I think the question...
Okay. No, you go.
I suspect we may get some questions that are more specific as we go along.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Gungahlin, overall offences for the last 12-month period are down 9%. So that's good news. I think probably when we're out and about talking to people, the greatest thing on their minds is property crime. That includes burglaries, stolen motor vehicles, thefts from vehicles and those sorts of offences. I'd highlight that ACT has probably one of the lowest rates of property crime in Australia, but nonetheless, we're very conscious how much it impacts on members of the community when they're a victim of those offences. In terms of burglaries, for this 12-month period compared to the last 12-month period, we're down 18% on those offences. So in terms of burglaries, what I would say is that they're mostly occurring in the daytime. Suburbs with ongoing construction, obviously like Throsby, have some different risks than the more developed suburbs. Our advice is very general. Lock doors and windows when you're out. When you're home, keep your front and back doors locked. If you have pet access areas, lock these at night or when not in use. We're also very big on community engagement, so monitoring not just your own property but also your neighbours. Security systems are obviously pretty great for us as well. CCTV is really important if that's a possibility for people. Business burglaries for those members of the business community are obviously mostly at night time when the businesses are unattended. Again, we'd ask businesses to consider CCTV and alarms. Also consider security measures with your neighbouring businesses, things that might protect, those areas that are in a cluster together. And also police hold a key holder register for details for out-of-hours contacts if something happens to your business. So it would be great if the business could update those details. Second thing would be stolen motor vehicles. That is up 36% from the previous year. That's obviously a huge concern. People save up, their independence, is impacted by not having their vehicles, and we understand that. Again, our advice in relation to stolen motor vehicles is lock your vehicles, even when they're in your driveway or in your garage. Remove valuables from the vehicle so there's nothing of appeal to people. Park in areas that have good lighting or within an area of CCTV coverage. For those with older vehicles, consider installing an engine immobiliser. And two really big recent trends has been cars being left unattended, running in driveways. We do understand people are trying to defrost their vehicles during the winter months, but at no time should you leave your car unattended and running in the driveway. And we've also seen a bit of a trend of valuables being taken from gyms and vehicles being stolen from gymnasiums. So that's another thing for people to be really aware of. We have a huge property crime prevention campaign at the moment called Outsmart the Offender. That's on our ACT Policing website. Burglaries, stolen motor vehicles are a huge focus of that, in line with our property crime reduction strategy. But tradie tools is another big thing, and we've seen a lot of that in Gungahlin. And our advice there is to secure those tools within vehicles, or if preferable, if possible, is to secure the vehicles in garages. Tools are very, very mobile assets. So obviously marking tools with a UV pen or engraving gives us a lot more to work with, and if located, we can return them to owners as well. So we're very, very conscious that our tradies need some support and some advice in that area. One of the last strategies in that is the lock up and cover items. I think a lot of the time those residing in apartments think they might be at lesser risk than home burglaries, but unfortunately we don't find that to be the case. Items left out on balconies are a huge risk. Storage cages and undercroft garages are also a huge risk area. So we're really encouraging people to adhere to security protocols within their apartment complexes. So if, you know, they're required to wait for the garage to close for someone, the next person coming in to swipe, that's obviously really important. From a general perspective, I think Suzanne touched on it really well. That community engagement is really important, not only with each other, but also with us. Every bit of information is part of the puzzle. It tells us what's going on and where. It might seem like a small thing. In recent months, we've had a lot of parcel thefts throughout, not just Gungahlin, but across the ACT. And I know a lot of people have felt that they didn't want to waste our time with that, but it's so important for us to know what's going on and where. So we really encourage members of the public to report those incidents to us. Sometimes there'll be an outcome, sometimes there won't, but it's all helping us piece the puzzle together. Staying in touch with your neighbours, reporting anything suspicious to us. Obviously, the better descriptions that you have, vehicle, colour, make, model, registration details, if at all possible. Every little bit of information is just so critical for us. And then 000, of course, if there's something life-threatening that you need us to attend. 1 July, starting 1 July, we have a firearms amnesty for anyone who wishes to hand in a firearm to police. That allows people in possession of unregistered firearms or firearm-related items to hand them in anonymously and without any penalty. You can attend Gungahlin Police Station and hand those firearms in. The purpose of that, obviously, is to remove firearms from the community so they don't fall in the hands of criminals. And then obviously, I'm not sure, should we just touch on Throsby or should we wait for questions?
I think if you've got something to report on Throsby that may preempt a list of questions, there've already been questions about have these people been arrested already, are they already out on bail, or some details like that. So whatever detail you can provide, that may well preempt a few questions, I think, Rachel.
I'll take that question on notice because I haven't looked at what's happened with the offenders because they're arrested and charged in New South Wales. So that would be something I'd need to make inquiries, obviously, across the border on that one. Throsby, I think I told you before, offences in Throsby are down 3% on the previous 12-month period. We're seeing very low numbers, really, in Throsby compared to other suburbs across Gungahlin Patrol. Probably traffic offences is the highest, number of offences, which makes sense with Horsepark Drive. We're very conscious of Horsepark Drive and we're trying to get up there as often as possible. We're seeing a lot of disturbances and check welfares up around Throsby. That's very normal. It's across the board, across suburbs in ACT. More often than not, these are family issues. So I think it's really important that people understand that the parties are all known to each other and it's not you know, random disturbances of people who are unknown to each other. I'm not sure what else I can give you on Throsby specifically, because I know that that incident is at the top of people's minds. So perhaps should we take some questions? And I'd also say if there's a forum or a time when that Throsby residents group gets together, I'd be happy to come and have a chat with them, you know, in a smaller group and talk through what's on their minds as well and what we might be able to achieve out there.
I think there'd be a lot of interest in picking that up. And just on that, Louise Chia was first with her comment a little while back. So Louise, did you want to?
Hi Rachel, thank you. Yes, sorry to everyone to ask another question, hog the time. It's just that other people have been talking to me about the crime issue, so I'm kind of just bringing all of the concerns I've heard to ask these questions. People are in the community are feeling more worried because it just seems as though crimes, including the sort of home invasions that they're being called, burglaries when people are at home and people break in, you know, that sort of situation. So lots of people are feeling nervous about it, and they're wanting to know, is there any, do you know of any reason why we've got this current spate of crime? And is it a sort of local thing where we've got activity from within Gungahlin suburbs, or is it just randomly coming from anywhere in Canberra? And as you said before, the parcel things seem to be common across all of Canberra. I think those things are quite relevant because people are thinking, oh, all of a sudden my suburb has become a high crime zone.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure what your question is in there. I think you're right, though. It is across the board. There's certainly nothing jumping out at us in Throsby that gives rise to any greater concern than anything. What I would say, I'll just be careful what I say because it is an ongoing investigation, but the offenders in that incident that obviously is of great concern to people were going up and down the highway. And I think the proximity of Throsby to the highway was part of the issue there. So it was very random. There was no targeted incident. And when these recidivist offenders, you know, are active, I think you can say fairly it's across the board. They're not really planning what they're doing, their actions. They're just looking for easy opportunities, which I guess is why we're so encouraging of all the general advice that we provide about making your home less appealing. And that goes for every member in the community, certainly not just Throsby or across Gungahlin Patrol.
Okay, thanks. Actually, the people I was talking to were from Ford and Bonner, so yeah, it wasn't just the Throsby incident.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but thank you. No, that's fine. It's just, yeah, good to know what the stats are, really.
Terence was keen to have the microphone for a moment. Terry?
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much, Peter. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Terence.
Thanks very much for coming on this evening. So yeah, I suppose the question is more than likely we don't, so I'm part of the Throsby community and we don't necessarily meet per se in person, but I am an admin on the Ros Facebook page. I'm more than happy to facilitate something virtually that AFP could attend and hear the concerns of the community. That would most certainly be appreciated, and maybe somehow we can get your contact details to tee something up.
Absolutely, Peter's got all my details. The only reason I like in person is because it, you know, people I think feel a bit more heard. But again, happy to do something via phone as well. Okay, cool. We see. So the question is I suppose what's concerning is I do realise that maybe Throsby doesn't have a high incident of crime, and we do have the 3 cameras that are on each of the entrances into the suburb. But I think you're quite right. Having such an open length of highway is most certainly tempting and doesn't deter people on foot or
with the cameras. So it's I'm really interested to understand how, what Susan mentioned about community police and how that will actually assist when this is happening in the middle of the night when people are sleeping. I understand there's the practical things that you can do, such as lock your doors and do as much of preventative stuff as you can, but I'm just really interested to see how community policing will actually help in these instances. And what really was the shock was that it was an armed invasion, and that they were in the house for a reasonable amount of the time, ransacking the house, until they actually left. And the vehicle that they left in, to me, seems like it maybe was, the premises was more targeted than random, because you don't find a Maloo in a garage every day. But yeah, we would love to be able to set up something with the Throsby community to talk to AFP and neighbourhood watch as to how we can better improve this safety in our community.
That sounds great, Terence. I'm more than happy for Peter to pass on all my details if you want to get in touch, or I can get your details and we'll set something up to have a chat offline about Throsby specifically.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
Those details on.
Yeah, thanks,
Dinesh
Peter.
Perswani, did you have a question?
Yes. Sorry, am I now on? Can everyone hear me?
You are.
Oh, yes. Thanks very much. Look, I live at Bonner, and I've heard a lot about Throsby today, but I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but just 2-3 weeks ago, there was actually a attempted robbery at Bonner, and where 2 individuals actually tried to enter a home and actually shot at someone, and someone actually got shot. And that was at 6 p.m. on a Sunday. And at times where families actually go walking. In fact, I was probably walking around that day. So certainly it doesn't seem to be just a Throsby problem, but a Gungahlin problem. And the fact that people with guns are around the streets at 6 p.m. on a Sunday where families are walking around is extremely concerning. And I don't think those people have been found yet, and they actually fled the premises on foot. So, and that's certainly concerning. So it's not just a Throsby incident, it's a Gungahlin problem, I think. But actually, more importantly, I want to raise another issue about, I've heard a lot of issues about road issues at Gungahlin Town Centre, but Mulligan's Flat Road, which is the main connection point from New South Wales into Horse Park Drive, clearly there's a problem there. Every single morning at night, it feels or sounds like a drag strip. And I understand that the police can't be everywhere. You've got limited resources. That makes perfect sense. However, when you hear the problem every single day, and it's turning, if you drive on that road, and I'm not sure if you've driven it recently, the amount of burn marks and rubber marks on the road is quite telling of what's going on. And because it's happening so often, my suggestion is all it takes is for police to put a camera or some private vehicles, and you would catch some of these culprits, because unless some action is taken, these people will just continuously behave in that manner, because there's nothing stopping them from changing their behavior. And I just want to make a point that a lot of families walk on that street, and I've gone for a walk with my baby daughter on that street, and the speed on that road, I think that the speed limit is 80 k's an hour. I wouldn't be surprised if some people are driving over 120 k's an hour. And something needs to be done. And before it turns into an outright drag strip, can some focus be made, because it's destroying the peace and serenity of the area, and that's Bonner and Ford, which surround that street. So it's certainly an issue for me. So I just want to understand if there's anything being done or looked into on that particular road, and just raise the fact that the gun problem is not just isolated to Throsby, it's Gungahlin.
Rachel.
Thanks for your feedback. Look, I do understand your concern about the Bonner incident. Again, the investigation's ongoing, so unfortunately I can't give you any further details at this time. I would say, though, that it is an ACT-wide problem, not a Gungahlin problem. I'm very aware of Mulligan's Flat Road. I will talk to our road policing area and see if they can increase patrols up there. Are you able to narrow down the time each day that you think is the main concern?
Oh, look, every single day it happens. I would say actually between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. and then at night between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. every single day. And it's the same. I'm telling you now, it's the same people. It's the same. I'm sorry to use the word idiots, and you can't stop these idiots. But and it's not just a Mulgans Flat. It's across the suburb, and it's the same people. It's the repeat individuals driving like crazy, and sometimes driving on streets with bus crossings, which kids use, and even during school hours on suburban areas, they're driving up to 100 k's an hour, and it's getting out of hand. So it needs more looking into.
Okay.
Leave that one with me, and I'll try and get some resources up there, obviously operational priorities permitting, but take on board your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I mean, we might wrap that up now. But I know hooning in our survey was the number one safety and security issue 18 months ago. I think some of the burglaries and home invasions have twigged that. But look, in the interest of time, I'm going to have to wrap this because we do have a couple more speakers talking about policing and security. So I'm going to thank Rachel very much for speaking. She might want to stay on for a little bit and just listen. But I might now thank you, Rachel, and ask Troy Roberts from the AFP Association, that's not the AFP, it's the AFP Association, to speak a little bit about their campaign to in support of an increased presence and improved facilities for the police here in Gungahlin.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, and thanks for the opportunity to come in tonight and have a chat. Well, I do want to talk about the Gungahlin Police Station. I'd also would like to have a chat about some of the issues that Terence has raised. I'd probably give you an overview of policing in Gungahlin and the lack of resources that are out there. So in relation to the station, as I said, our focus has been on getting a new Gungahlin police station. Now, what that looks like is either a complete rebuild and a new station or a refurbishment of the current GESC. We're open to both. Our priority over the last couple of months has been the Traffic Operations Centre, which is, I know this is in Belconnen, but that building was actually dangerous for our members. So we sort of have to take a little bit of pressure off Gungahlin to get the TOC up and running. And I am pleased to say that the government has come to the party. They have provided for a new building, which will be coming online mid next year out at Hume. So that's a good result. I know it doesn't fix Gungahlin Station, but now we have the TOC resolved. Our attention will go back on to Gungahlin. We did a muster out there. We did a breakfast for the troops out there last week, and we had a good chat with them. There has been some developments as relation to staffing. There is a crime team out there now, which is fantastic. Gungahlin never had that crime team, so ACT Policing has come to the party and put the crime team out there. The accommodation aspect of it isn't great, but it's a start and it's a movement in the right direction. It still disappoints us that the members have a demountable for a change room, which sits inside the garage area, but it's an improvement on what they had 12 months ago. So that's a step forward. It's not ideal, but it's a step forward. But the members are still eating off the exhibit table. There's the limited soft interview rooms where victims can go in to have a chat with police and provide a statement. There's still only one holding cell, which was close to the interview rooms. There's still privacy issues for people in custody who come in the back door. So there's still a lot of issues with that station, which we're working through. There is, in the last budget, some money to do a scoping study. We have asked questions of where that scoping is, but given the fact we put more pressure on the government to get the TOC up and running, we'll now revisit how that money is being spent and what sort of timeframes are we looking at. So we'll put the pressure back on the government to say what's happening with Gungahlin, because it is now a priority. It's the smallest police station in the ACT, looking after the second biggest district in the ACT. The issue that we had before, we just can't pick up 20 police officers and put them in Gungahlin station because they just won't fit. So, and you guys, well, the members out there are incredibly hardworking. They're a great bunch of guys, and they work for the community. So it's not a matter of, there's just not enough of them out there. A normal traditional police station, the ACT, has a patrol strength of about 1 in 7, 1 in 8 on a good shift. Gungahlin's down to 1-4, 1-5. So, which is basically a couple of cars and a sergeant. You need someone to man the front desk. So, in relation to police numbers, there needs to be a boost out there. We will continue that in the background. I know crime stats is important to the government, and the government often say that crime stats are going down, and that's fantastic. But what they don't look at is call to service. They're not looking at a missing person job or a mental health job where there may not be any offences, but it takes up 8-9 hours of a police officer's time, which means that other jobs are backing up. So the guys out of Gungahlin, guys and girls out of Gungahlin are incredibly busy. So they're a great bunch. They work incredibly hard, but we just need more members on the ground. ACT will tell you, policing will tell you that, we can move people from one station to another, and that's great for priority 1, priority 2 jobs. But what you're not seeing is the proactive jobs. You don't see the cars cruising the suburbs anymore. You don't see the police officers having the time to be able to walk through the marketplace. And we want to change that. It gets back to that community policing model, which Susan talked about earlier. But that model will only work if you have members on the ground. You have the numbers there to support that model. And, truth be told, at the moment, the numbers in Gungahlin aren't there to support that number. I'm happy to, anyone's got any questions or anything like that, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. Anyone out there have any specific questions? I see a suggestion that, how about a new station at the corner of David Walsh and Horse Park Drive? I think that may be a step or two after where we need to get to, which is the government needs to step forward and do that. I do remember seeing something in the election commitments around scoping a new police station. Is that real, or is that?
Yeah. No, it's real. It's in the budget. There's an allocation of money, and as I said, now that we've sort of resolved the traffic operations centre issue, we'll now be asking the government of what the status is of that commitment. So we are meeting with Minister Johnman hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but we'll also be writing to him to say, hey, good work on the TOC, and I said the government has really delivered on the TOC, which is fantastic. Now we need to focus on Gungahlin. It's been an issue now for 10, 12 years, let's be honest. We need to get it resolved. It needs to get moving because the Gungahlin community, it's the second biggest population area in the ACT. It deserves a better police station. The members in there deserve a better work environment. And so getting back to something that Susan said earlier about the budget commitment from a couple of years ago, the 69 or 69 officers, not officers, it's staff. No one can actually give us a correct answer as to what that breakdown will be. Now, I'm happy to be corrected on the record for this, but I don't think we've seen any extra police officers in uniform as a result of that funding. It's been, the funding's been used well, but it's more in your strategic areas, your intel areas, your forensic areas, stuff like that. So you're not actually seeing the members out on the road on the beat, which I think when you get into the community policing model, and I said someone mentioned it in the comments, visibility is key.
All right, Henley had a question.
Hey, thanks, Troy, for coming down and answering, explaining what's going on. It looks like from what you said, looks like there is a resource problem that's what causing a major issue in Gungahlin. And at the moment with the Gungahlin police station, they're sharing with the ambulance, fire service, and then, emergency service. So that's make it more complicated because with that small space. So what's the average number of police should be there in the size of like a population of Gungahlin? What's the average police we should have and what we got at the moment?
Yeah, thanks for your question. It's a good question. Look, most of the other stations run, as I said, one sergeant and up to 9 constables, depending on your court. You've got training, you've got people on rec leave. So in reality, bums in patrol cars, 1 and 6, 1 and 7. At Gungahlin, from the information that I've been getting from the troops on the ground, it's on a good shift 1 and 5, bad shift 1 and 3. If you can get a redirection from another station or from another area, you might get up to 1 and 4. But once again, that all depends on court, on leave, and stuff like that. And the other issue that you got to remember from, if we can get to 1 and 5, 1 and 6 out there, that'll be great. But all it takes is for a death or a really serious family violence incident, and that patrol can be off the road for that entire shift dealing with that matter. So there's no surge capacity out there, which from a member point of view, I've worked at Gungahlin. I've been in the ACT police for 20 years. I went out there back in the day, and not having that surge capacity, especially in a backup, city station, Belconnen station, are a hell of a long way when you're fighting for your life. Most of those struggles from a welfare point of view, fights don't last very long. And it's, from a welfare point of view, it's scary not knowing that your closest backup and your closest ally is, a good 5-7 minutes away. So from a welfare point of view, it'll be great to get the numbers up to that. I think Gungahlin deserves a fully functional ACT police station. 1 and 9 would be what I would aim for.
Okay.
Yeah. And sorry, Peter, just to follow up, thanks, Roy, for that. Just now, because the ACT government legalized a whole bunch of illegal drugs and stuff, so that's going to cause a major issue for you guys. So the police is ready to cater for those ones, because now we're gonna have a lot of traffic happens now, and drug driving and all those things gonna happen.
Yeah.
Are we prepared yet? Are we ready yet? Or do you think the government is really pushing while the crime rate is already going up and now we're gonna have this one? Are you guys got enough resources to handle this?
Really good question. And to be honest with you, I don't know. Policing is only one aspect of this whole policy change. Our concern is, yes, there'll be more calls to service, but also the health side of it. The theory out there that police lock up people for a simple, a minor possession charge, to be honest with you, is rubbish. Most people who get caught on possession charges, it's normally a secondary or a summary offence. They're normally caught doing a burglary, stolen motor vehicle, fighting in public. There's other issues which bring them to the police attention, and it's why you're searching them, where you find the drugs. So, as far as will that increase a call to service? I honestly don't know. We're looking at it more from a legislation point of view and a health point of view. More for the fact that the ACT legislation isn't compatible with the Commonwealth legislation, which puts our members in professional standards danger. So Commonwealth legislation always trumps state and territory legislation. So we're fighting it on that ground. It's not compatible with the Commonwealth legislation, but also we don't think the ACT can support the health implications which this policy change will bring in. And from a police officer's point of view, where you could see an increase of service is the old revolving door of where we take someone in to get, assessed medically, so that they come to our attention. Maybe they're walking down the street intoxicated on illicit substance, so it's not really a criminal matter. So you convey them to hospital. Hospital does what they need to do, and then by the time you get back to your zone and you finish the paperwork, they're already home doing, something else, dangerous to themselves or someone else. So there's a whole revolving door when you talk about the cycle of crime. So police will divert where there's a diversion option, and we don't think that those options are in place at the moment.
Okay.
Thanks, mate.
Right, Troy. Thank you for that. I think we've had a run to the end of the questions here. Thank you for that. And we are still working hard to get more content into the evening. Thank you very much for that. Look, if there's anything we can do to support your advocacy work for the increased police presence in the Gungahlin, you please make sure you let us know. As you can see, there's pretty broad-based and consistent support for what you're working on. So best of luck with it.
No, fantastic. Thank you. And I said, if anyone has any questions or they want to bounce an idea off me, once again, Peter, I'm happy to share my details with the community.
No worries, by all means. Thanks very much, Troy.
Thank you.
Look, it's been an absolute smorgasbord of policing and crime prevention issues tonight, and it won't stop yet. I'll ask Laurie from Neighbourhood Watch to say a few words. Laurie, we are a little bit over time.
Yep.
It's code for very, very over time. So if you could give us a little bit of an update on Neighbourhood Watch and what's happening in Gungahlin, if anything, that'd be terrific.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll keep it reasonably brief. Rachel has covered a lot of the issues that I would normally cover in terms of the advising on things that people in the community can do to help keep themselves safe and their possessions secure. I just want to make a couple of very quick comments before I actually talk a little bit about Neighbourhood Watch. I want to support Rachel and say that it is absolutely critical that members of the public continue to report things, no matter how insignificant they think they are. We heard from about the road issues. If you come across people hooning, ring up either Crime Stoppers or ACT Policing on 13 14 44 number. It helps them build the intelligence picture. And if they know that if incidents are happening consistently every day at a certain time, that allows them to actually target the limited resources that they've got to address some of those issues. So that's one of the key messages. Just another quick one on Throsby without pushing that too hard. I have been invited to talk to the Throsby community next Thursday evening via an online session about Neighbourhood Watch and what we can do to kick that off. We did have a go at forming a Neighbourhood Watch in Throsby back in January. I had a meeting with a couple of residents, but nothing came of that, and we didn't hear back from those people at the time. So I'm hopeful that this next push, and given the catalyst to revisit Neighbourhood Watch in Throsby, that we'll get some runs on the board on this occasion. More than happy to be involved in that and to help kick that off again. Okay, just very quickly, for those that are listening both on Facebook and to the forum here, just very quickly, just a bit of background on Neighbourhood Watch. Neighbourhood Watch is actually a community-based organisation. We are entirely run by volunteers. We have no paid staff whatsoever. So everybody gives their time freely to help assist communities build a safe and secure neighbourhood and somewhere where people feel a sense of well-being in their suburb. We work in partnership with ACT Policing. We operate under a signed memorandum of understanding with ACT Policing, and that sets the parameters around how we will operate and what we will do to both assist ACT Policing into meeting their mission, and what they'll do to assist us to actually help communities build safe and secure neighbourhoods. So at the moment, we've grown up based on a model of delivering newsletters around suburbs. Each suburb develops an area, a neighbourhood watch area. Gungahlin has had success in the past, but we've had quite a number of areas actually drop off. People tend to lose interest, or their priorities change as family circumstances change or careers progress. And we've got about 4 or 5 key suburbs in Gungahlin that I, as the incoming president, have focused on that we want to try and rebuild. So those people in places like Palmerston, Nichols, Franklin, a little bit, Ngunnawal, we will be pushing those areas a little bit harder in the next 12 months as we try and reinvigorate those areas. We, on the books, have a large number of members, but not a lot of activity going on. The newer areas, as I think a number of speakers have spoken about before, are interesting when we try to develop neighbourhood watch in those areas. There's a point to which we don't feel we actually offer a lot of benefit. As people are starting, building their own homes, they're more interested in when the local shops are going to be built, when the local schools are going to be built. The crime does tend to be related around tradies, a lot of theft, particularly from building sites and tradies' vehicles, and so developing a sense of community and getting neighbours to talk to neighbours and be active around their community is actually quite difficult in some of those newer suburbs. We do believe Throsby's at that point where we can actually prove beneficial in deterring crime. So what we're essentially about is building, as I say, a sense of well-being in the community. So if you've got an active community that's working together, that's involved with each other and looking out for each other, that in itself actually tends to deter criminal activity. It doesn't help with your people coming in the middle of the night trying to with firearms, but it generally creates a much a less attractive place, if you like, to the opportunistic criminals. And we've heard from Rachel that a lot of the crime that's happening, and it's not just Gungahlin, it is across the whole of the ACT, is opportunistic crime. A lot of thefts from vehicles, for instance, as Rachel's highlighted, people leaving cars running in driveways while they're having their breakfast in the morning to warm them up, people leaving valuables on their front seats. And the one that actually really astounds me is people actually leaving the key fobs to start your car, the spare ones, in the glove box of their vehicles. And that's happened, I gather, a number of times. In Neighbourhood Watch, we try to raise awareness of these sorts of issues and trends in the community. We're also moving away from just based on newsletter deliveries. A lot of people will remember Neighbourhood Watch as a bunch of people walking around dropping newsletters into letterboxes on a monthly or quarterly basis. We do realise that demographics are changing, particularly again in some of the newer and some of the reinvigorated suburbs, particularly in Canberra, where people actually their community is actually online. Their community is on their iPhone. So we're looking at ways how we can actually build, some resilience in those areas and actually attract a younger membership to Neighbourhood Watch. I did a radio interview when I first took over, and we were described as a bunch of octogenarian curtain peepers. That sort of concept of what Neighbourhood Watch is about needs to change, and the people in the Gungahlin community as a fairly new, vibrant community are what we were trying to actually change that perception. So I'm not going to run through, as I say, all the sorts of things that we encourage people to do, because Rachel's already done that. I will just advertise Neighbourhood Watch does have a website, neighbourhoodwatchact.com.au. There is information there on what Neighbourhood Watch is about, how you can become involved. There's a membership form on there that you can fill out and send in if you're interested in becoming involved. But more importantly, My contact details are on there. If you're interested in setting up a group or interested to find out what's happening in your particular suburb and whether you can actually assist in setting up a neighbourhood watch in that group, or indeed if you're in a group that you know is active but you just want to discuss some of the things that are going on in there, please, my email address is open and my phone is always available to people to give me a call.
That's great, Laurie. Actually, if you could throw together a couple of paragraphs that sort of capture your activities in Gungahlin with all those details and links, then we can post that on the webpage and put a Facebook piece in there to sort of drive people towards where you might have your material. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. Just fine. I mean, I'm a resident of Gungahlin. I live in Casey, so I'm a local. I'm interested in what's going on in the region. I am the first Northside president we've had for some time, so obviously a lot of the effort has been focused on some of the stuff that's going on south. So this is an ideal opportunity for Gungahlin to step up and actually become really engaged in Neighbourhood Watch and actually even help me drive where Neighbourhood Watch goes in the future.
That's brilliant. Do you need any sponsorship and money? I mean, is there money issues? I mean, what are the barriers to getting Neighbourhood Watch started, apart from the obvious, which is getting people to at the time?
Money's not a problem. We do receive some quite generous funding at the moment, which I'll be open and honest. I won't say struggle to spend, but and I'm looking at, as I say, looking at some new ways of going about business. So we're putting some investment into the future. But no, the biggest issue for me is communication, and that's communication down from our side out into the community, and that's where we're putting a bit of investment in getting messaging out there, a bit of a bad term I know, but marketing about Neighbourhood Watch and how it can help the community. But the biggest issue is volunteers and people having the time to commit, and even at the local area, that's an issue. Neighbourhood Watch is managed in the ACT by a board of 7 people, and that board of management is also the executive. So we are the only people that there are to do work in developing it. If there are people out there with IT skills or interested in being treasurers or those sorts of things, we're always interested to hear from them, because we're always on the lookout for that sort of expertise as well.
Well, I'm sure there'll be definitely a good crop of IT folk out there, and certainly the community council will be very keen to help you with some of your comms needs through all of our channels, email, Facebook, Twitter, and those sort of things. Laurie, thank you very much for coming along. If you can follow up with a little bit of a blurb, we can get on a website. I think we can help push things along. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
All right. Packed agenda. I knew it was a bit of a stretch to hope that we could stay on time with such a packed agenda. But we now have reached the last item, which will be kicked off by Ben Green from the Environment Planning and Sustainable Development Directorate. Ben's responsible for the Gungahlin District Community and Recreational Facilities Assessment, which probably has some dreadful acronym. Ben, over to you.
Thanks, Peter, and thank you everyone for taking time. And I'll try and truncate this somewhat so you can get back to your families. But yeah, this is some really important work. Before I do begin, I'd like to acknowledge our traditional custodians of the land in which we're meeting today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Hopefully everyone can see the presentation. I certainly can, so we'll go with that. Just so for people's awareness, tonight I've also asked some of my team to come along. I've only been in this role for the last month and a bit, maybe even a couple of months now. So a lot of historical context I'm not going to have. So I have asked Lee Jury, who's the executive branch manager within my team, Franco Freno, who heads up our projects team, Jennifer Young, who's the assistant director in my team as well, to join us. In addition, and I think part of some of the conversation earlier on has been in relation to the territory plan aspects, in particular the draft variation of the territory plan. So Alex Couch, who's the senior director with our planning and urban policy area within EPSDD, has also joined us. Just is that presentation kicking through? Yeah. I note some of the comments that Peter made earlier and some of the historical context in relation to the Casey site. So I won't go over the detail in that. However, I think it's worth noting and mentioning that there were 2 studies undertaken by EPSTD in 2019 for the Casey Group Centre sites. And these studies look specifically at the Casey sites. However, I think it's fair to say, and I think the comments this evening are similar, that there needed to be a greater understanding of community needs assessments across the entire Gungahlin district as a whole, rather than just focusing on specific sites. And look, this is really to gain that holistic understanding around community facility needs in the area, how they can best be provided for what is required now, but I think more importantly, and reflecting on some of the conversations that have been had tonight around particular facilities, including the police station and emergency services facilities in Gungahlin, what is our future need? And let's set it up right now for the future. Part of that, and that, I suppose, contextual understanding led to some work commencing in December of last year, where we engaged SGS Economics and Planning to undertake the Gungahlin District Community and Recreational Facilities Assessment. There is no fancy acronym. I'd be surprised if someone could come up with a nice acronym for those words. And look, this includes an element of community consultation as well. In terms of where that work is up to, we anticipate that the assessment will be completed next month, with the findings used to inform the next phase of community engagement activities. There's yet to be a decision made around what will be released to community with respect to that report, whether it's the entirety of the report, whether it's the findings of the report. But look, I've met with Peter a few weeks back now, and I acknowledge that and respect the views, and not for me to agree or disagree with the views, but I think it would be really important that those findings do get released and the report gets released. So that will certainly be something that I'll be encouraging from my perspective to do. A number of the key planning engagements are occurring across Gungahlin at the same time, and I think that's reflective of the interest, particularly in Gungahlin, around multiple areas in district planning and community facilities. I think I also acknowledged some of the earlier conversations when Ms. Orr was online around the surveys that she's undertaking and others in terms of other MLAs. One of the things that we worked with, and EPSCD has responsibility for the district planning work, which has been mentioned earlier, and the community facilities work. We're trying to target different areas. There are going to be people within our community, and I say our because I also live in Gungahlin, but there are people within our community that will have a keen interest with district planning at the entire district level, but there are going to be people that either represent community organisations, have a specific passion or need to focus on community facilities, that will be more drawn to completing community facilities assessments, I suppose, in terms of what is up on your say. And I think there are elements there that we expect some crossover. And I suppose one of the key things from me tonight is to assure people within the Community Council that the findings out of the district planning and the community facilities will cross over to some extent, and anything that is in the district planning work relating to community facilities will be considered as part of the next phase for us on the community facility work. At this stage, we are, and this is the engagements that we're running, the input collected will feed across different projects where relevant. And as I've mentioned, and just by way of example, if we do get some comments about sports venues or a community hub in the district planning, that will filter across. In relation to district planning, and as Peter's mentioned, it's been considered as part of the ACT Planning System Review and Reform Project, primarily as a way to improve the line of sight from the ACT planning strategy through to the territory plan. And I know there were some earlier questions around the documentation that feeds into this, and the advice provided by Ms. Orr is accurate, that the territory does have an overall planning strategy with key areas that it expects to deliver. There are also government commitments made. One of those that is of relevance is the 70-30 in terms of the urban infill rather than the urban sprawl approach. And so for us, we're trying to take this information, there's the context of those existing documents, but really look to inform what the future at a district level will look like as we go from planning strategy through to territory plan, and and through the planning system reform project. Happy to take some questions on that at the end. As I mentioned, Alex Couch from our planning and urban policy team, who's been leading the work on the district planning side of things, is with us. In relation to community facilities, we know that this, as I mentioned earlier, is a key area of interest, and we've been asking for input. So the engagement is capturing data specific to the community recreational needs and demand. I think it's worth mentioning some of the information that we are starting to see come through these surveys, and some of it may or may not be surprising, but we have seen over 200 survey responses already. We've seen 18 pins on the map, and that was something that Peter mentioned earlier in terms of this particular exercise. And in terms of the pin on the map, some of those comments are crossing over, but I think what we would like to see and what we'd encourage people is to not only do the Your Say survey on it, but also take the time, if they can, to put a pin on the map. The early data is kind of reflecting community facility needs in Casey and Throsby. Now, I don't know whether that, from a demographic perspective, is where we're getting the most level of interest, or maybe that's where people are seeing more vacant parcels of land potentially for this use, but that's probably an early indicator at this stage of what we're starting to see. And when we're reviewing the map data and the survey data together, we're seeing that sports facilities and general community facilities are the more immediate community needs. For future community needs, we're starting to see a trend around health facilities being identified by community. So that is really a really short snapshot of the early data. By no means is that going to reflect what the end result will be in terms of the data captured as part of these surveys. So I again encourage you to work through that through your networks to get that pushed out further to the community. In addition to, and as previously spoke about, the outcomes of this survey will be provided to SGS Economics to integrate that with the existing work that they've done with community, but also the analysis work that the investigations they've been undertaking. I thought it'd be worth mentioning briefly the Casey sites, and look, I understand there's been recent inquiries, engagement from community in relation to these sites in particular. Just for some clarification at this point in time, and Alex is here and might be able to provide some further details on the territory planning side of things, but the sites are currently zoned as commercial zone 1, so it's CZ1, and they do appear on the indicative land release program. Part of that program has identified a 100 dwelling requirement, 10 of which are to be affordable. And in addition to that, 24,000 square metres of commercial land area. Government have committed to delivering community facilities on that site. Now, the makeup of that and how much floor area is yet to be determined. That will be fed through the community facility work that is already being undertaken and the assessments already underway, the Your Say surveys. And I think it's fair to say that any further consultation that we need to undertake will also feed into that. There may be a need, and I think this is really early in terms of context. By no means is this a decision of government, but the current territory planning requirements allow for 2 stories, but there is a criteria that can allow for an increased height on these particular parcels of land. And it may be that to achieve a greater yield for community facility land or potentially commercial land, that height limitation of 2 stories might need to push up to 4 stories. If we need to go down that path, and as I said, there are no decisions taken in relation to this, that would require government to undertake an amendment to the territory plan. So I think where we're trying to get to is once community facility assessments are completed, we'll be able to narrow down the most suitable community facility uses for the Casey sites based on the data from community facility assessments. The 2 2019 assessments are undertaken, and what's been heard from community through the Your Say surveys. In addition to that, as I mentioned, SGS has undertaken the one-on-one conversations with community groups and members of the community. And That's included Gungahlin Community Council, I understand, Peter, and I also understand communities at work in particular. So from this point, we'll be going back to the community and we'll be undertaking more detailed community consultation on the Casey sites. And I think that's a really important point to make. By no means have there been decisions taken at this point in time with respect to that. And broadly on the broader Gungahlin Community Centre element, as mentioned, that was a commitment under the Parliamentary and Government Agreement, and there will be further consultation occurring on that. The shape of that consultation and what that will look like is yet to be determined. We don't necessarily have an endless budget to do full-blown consultation, face-to-face meetings and the like. However, that is something that may be explored through budget processes as to what would be the most appropriate approach. So I think, you know, in communication with members of the Community Council and people's networks, it is important to note that further consultation will be undertaken, and that will be decided once we have a better understanding following the outcomes of the existing Your Say and the survey work, but also the report by SGS. So I've tried to truncate that as much as I can and to, I suppose, leave some time for questions, noting that I do have my team here, and I've also got Alex Couch here from our planning and policy area. So I'll hand back to you, Peter, on that.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So I've asked for questions, but you know, we're, I guess, a few minutes. We are actually 30 minutes into the game, or 5 minutes from kickoff. I'm not sure which. Don't follow rugby league these much.
I don't follow rugby league either. I'm assuming there's an Origin game tonight, is there?
Yeah, apparently so. A dead rubber game. Look, I guess the question I get asked most when I point out this 100 dwellings and 24,000 square metre number is, where did that come from? As most people understand it, this was all part of this deal that was done with the owner, the now owner of the Casey Market Centre, a market town, that he would acquire those 2 blocks along with the group centre site, develop the group centre site and service the other 2 blocks and hand it back to the government for community use. And at the time, there was lots of talk of lawn bowl greens being put there, and times moved on and that's not happening. But I think all of the community seemed very surprised about where this 100 dwellings and 24,000 square metres of commercial, where did it come from? Did someone imagineer it out as part of the indicative land release program, or what drove that?
Yeah, I might look to my team to answer that in terms of historical context. And Alex, I'm not quite sure whether you have that context, or whether Lee, you might be able to jump in and provide some context to that. Look, the indicative land release program is a program that Cabinet effectively make a decision on in terms of expectations, and that takes into consideration not necessarily the district in isolation. It is really focusing on the broader planning requirements of the territory. But Lee, do you have any of the detail that Peter is seeking?
I think what we'd need to do, Peter, is really come back to you with a bit more information. It has been on the land release program for a couple of years, and that came out of a budget process with government, but the background to that we can look into in a bit more detail and come back to you.
That'd be super helpful. You know, I'm obviously aware that it's been part of the ILRP. There's an article on our website where we did a bit of analysis on the ILRP trying to flag these sites, but certainly all the efforts we've made to try and find out where these things come from is unclear. I can certainly understand on more commercial sites, you know, you can apply a formula around yields and all that stuff. Well, sort of, I can appreciate it. Maybe I don't understand it. But for these sites, which everyone I've spoken to, and if you look at the original Casey suburb master plan strategy documents, and you speak to the people involved in the arrangement that was put forward with James Konduras and his business, their understanding was be for community use, and we continue to be surprised that these other things have come up. So anything you can provide to explain how numbers for dwellings and commercial space appear on the ILRP would be really helpful.
Yeah, look,
happy to do that.
no one else has got any questions. So look, I guess the other question I had, and Lee will have seen my emails on this, is around the nature of the consultations. And, I think one of the frustrations the community has is there are some really, really good examples of consultations. And the one in Gungahlin that comes to mind is the consultation that was done on the Gold Creek homestead site, where an amount of time was spent to educate a panel of people, carefully chosen for diversity and interests on the issues at hand, and get them away from answering 3 quick questions and actually get them to think about what the site meant and what its values were. And it sounds a bit airy-fairy, but what it ended up doing was not only producing a statement of expectations for the community, that statement of expectations was connected to the actual commercial sale, so that whoever tended to buy the site was obligated to say how they were going to respond to the community expectation statement. And for us, that's kind of, I don't want to use the phrase gold standard, but that's kind of the best possible outcome, where an informed group of the community have the power to influence the outcome. And I just, our experience with the Have Your Say surveys is less deep. It's less informed and less impactful. So I would, I appreciate you can't do a really, really good job on everything, but I think people expect you to. And particularly for something that's going to be a community facility, you'd really, really want to spend a lot of time engaging with the community. Otherwise, a lot of people will be disappointed.
Yeah, look, Peter, I don't disagree with you, and I think that's part of what does that next phase of community engagement look like? Does it look like a broad community engagement piece, or does it look like, and I think what you described is kind of like a community panel scenario? And look, that in my mind is certainly something that is within scope. Whether there's funding available to do that and whether that's the best approach, I think once we've got that broader, and really the depth is not there necessarily with your say, particularly on a topic like this. So I think once we've got a clear picture of that, a clear picture from the report that is being undertaken at this point in time, that will really feed into it. So as much as there's been no decision made, I would be comfortable in saying that we would not be ruling out a community panel approach for this.
That's great. I think Kim Catchell from, well, I don't know which hat he'll be on, but if he manages to unmute himself, he's got a question.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I think I've unmuted there now, and I made a comment there before. So I do have a couple of hats on, CEO of Tennis ACT and then chair of the COMPS group, the Coalition of Major Participation Sports, which comprises the 9 major sporting bodies. But certainly from a sporting facility perspective, and wearing my tennis hat first here, we've got a lot of data and analysis to show the needs of communities based on demographics, population sizes, etc., etc., etc. That would be probably really useful overlay with some of these studies. And certainly, without speaking on behalf of all the other sports, I certainly know a number of them have also got their own bodies of work, and infrastructure is a common thread amongst all sports. That I think there's a lot of information there that could really help inform this body of work, and ensuring that community sport and recreation facilities are established to service the community appropriately.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I think that's some really useful information. I might reach out to you offline. I don't know, Peter, if you've got Kim's details, if you wanted to send him my details. I think that's a useful conversation to have, and how we can integrate that. Obviously, that is one component of community facilities from our perspective. There is the sporting element, but there's also cultural and other community groups that need to feed into that work. And we've got 200 responses to this particular survey thus far. And I think that will have a pretty broad cross-section of community views and interests. And look, there are groups that approach government direct in terms of future needs for their particular community. So really keen to have a further conversation with you, Kim, about that information and data that you have.
Yep, sounds good. As I said, I'm not just from a tennis perspective, but from all sports.
Certainly.
It was utilised leading up to the election, and the case for tennis was made with the Amaroo site, but there's still an undersupply, not only for tennis, but all sports, most of the major sports in Gungahlin.
Yeah, Thanks, Kim. Appreciate that.
All right. I'm noticing a few people are dropping off because they've got to go to bed or do other things. So in the interest of time, I might thank Alex and Ben and Lee for staying on. It's always difficult trying to work out where in the order to be, and generally the public servants generally want to be after the politicians, so a less dangerous place to be. So thank you very much for staying on and persevering through to the end of the agenda. We're certainly very keen, as we have been for many, many months, to get a good outcome and get all of the services and employment and retail things that everyone kind of expects that will magically appear, trying to work out a plan to fit them all into the remaining footprint of Gungahlin. People might be amused to note I sat down with some people from Parks and Conservation Services on Monday in my capacity as a mountain biker, trying to identify locations in Gungahlin where we could perhaps do some mountain bike trails. And unfortunately, all of the reserves in Gungahlin are very high value, very high conservation values, very unique grasslands. The amount of available space, even though it looks like we've got vast open plains to use, actually they're all being very carefully nurtured to maintain a lot of very unique plants and animals. So the amount of space you think you might have is a lot less, and I think there's a lot of expectations that there's a lot more yet to fit into Gungahlin. So many challenges for the next 12 to 36 months. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll be back again in August. I think we're going to have an update on another development in the town centre from one of the recent sales. And we've got one or two other items on the hook. And we have our standing offer for the Minister for Planning to attend. And we remain ever hopeful that he might show up. So thank you very much. Good night all. And with a bit of luck, I'll chase down some presentations and get them online as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pam. Thanks, everyone.